For the first time in years, it feels like we finally have a competitive, close college football playoff race. There's a lot of unknowns heading into conference championship weekend with 8 teams still alive to make the coveted Final Four. And depending on what happens in these conference championship games, we could see a variety of different scenarios and a variety of different selections come Selection Sunday. Today, guys, we're here to break down 3 of the more chaotic scenarios. 3 scenarios that could have some teams sweating it out a little bit on Selection Sunday, and 3 scenarios that are bound to cause quite a bit of controversy come Selection Sunday. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys, here with our, as we promised, whiteboard college football playoff chaos selection show. Big time study session as we are just days away from Selection Sunday. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks and including our holiday special, where for just $34.99, you will get every single conference championship spread pick, every single bowl game spread pick, and every single NFL playoff game spread pick as well. All those picks for just $34.99. No other site in the country is going to give you those picks for that low of a price, and no other site in the country is going to guarantee that we'll win with those picks. We have a 60% winning percentage this year. We've hit over 60% of our bets in the postseason each of the last 5 years, and we want you to sign up, win big with us, and become a member of our GE Nation. So let's take a look. We've got three different scenarios up here on the board, as promised. And we're going to try to break them down in the best way possible. We'll start over here. They kind of go in order from maybe least chaotic to most chaotic, or least controversial to most controversial. You know, obviously for the committee, the easiest thing for them to happen, the best thing for them to get rid of any controversy, any sweating it out on Sunday, is just for the big-time favorites to win, right? If Georgia beats Alabama, if Michigan beats Iowa, if Washington beats Oregon, and Florida State beats Louisville, it's a done deal. Those are your 4 teams. We don't have to worry about anything come Selection Sunday. But more than likely, knowing college football, one or multiple of those teams are going to lose in the current top 4. So you look at this selection here. What we have here is saying that Georgia loses to Alabama, and that's I think the biggest thing when it comes to chaos, right? If Georgia were to lose to Alabama, that's where things get automatically, just like that, really, really interesting. If Georgia loses to Alabama and Oregon beats Washington, we would have Michigan, who we do believe is going to beat Iowa, up at number 1. Oregon, more than likely, could get into that number 2 spot, beating Washington. We also have Florida State losing to Louisville. That's not saying we're predicting that. We're saying that's a possibility here. So you would have the undefeated Big Ten champ, Michigan, the Pac-12 champion, and regardless of whether it's Oregon or Washington, the Pac-12 champ is getting in. It's going to happen. So if Georgia goes down, if Florida State goes down, and Washington goes down, well, that's 3 teams in the current top 4 that have lost, which obviously Michigan would be in, obviously Oregon would be in. Texas, right on the outside looking in, if they beat Oklahoma State, they would get in, which would then leave a scenario here where you have a 12-1 SEC champion Alabama, a 12-1 Georgia team that prior to the Alabama game had won the last 2 national championships and was on a 29-game winning streak, but lost to Alabama, let's say narrowly, in the SEC championship game, and a 12-1 Florida State who lost to Louisville in the ACC title game. And I'm here to say that Florida State, if they lose to Louisville, they don't have a chance. A Louisville team that is no longer in the top 10 after losing to Kentucky, that's not going to look as good of a win or a loss for Florida State, and I think the committee is already skeptical about the Seminoles after the loss of Jordan Travis. So Florida State has to win to get in. A loss, no case whatsoever. So in that case, Florida State's out, but we'll talk about it. It comes down to Alabama, Georgia. The question for me is, will the committee really, if Georgia does lose to Alabama, will they really drop Georgia from number 1 all the way down to 5? You're going to drop on 5 spots after losing by, let's say, 3 points to Alabama? I don't see how you can't, though. I don't see how you can say, hey, Alabama, congrats, you beat Georgia, but we still think Georgia should go into the playoff ahead of you. It just can't happen. That would be ridiculous for that to happen. So in this scenario, Alabama beats Georgia, Oregon beats Washington, Florida State loses, you would have Michigan, Oregon, Texas going from like 7th all the way to number 3, and Alabama slipping in at number 4, and that would be your college football playoff, and that's a very possible thing that could happen. And the second scenario is relatively similar. Same thing. We'd say Alabama, let's say Alabama does beat Georgia. But this time, let's say Florida State beats Louisville. Let's say that happens. Well, Michigan's going to beat Iowa. Okay. Pac-12 champion wins. Whether it's Washington or Oregon, they get in. And here's the thing. You can flip-flop those, right? If Florida State wins and obviously Georgia loses, you're going to see Florida State rise up probably to number 3. If Washington beats Oregon, they'll move up to probably number 2. Oregon, you can make the case, could jump Florida State for number 2. Regardless, the seeding won't matter because the Pac-12 champion Florida State would play each other in this scenario. So whether they're 2 or 3, it doesn't matter. So that's what would happen there. So Pac-12 champ Florida State at 2 and 3. And then you would have interesting scenario here. 12-1 Texas, 12-1 Alabama, 12-1 Georgia, all fighting for that last spot. And that's where the head-to-head comes in theory. The Texas win over Oklahoma State would not be nearly as impressive as Alabama's win over Georgia. It just wouldn't be. Alabama being the number 1 team in the country as a 5-point underdog is more impressive than Texas beating Oklahoma State, a mediocre 9-3 Oklahoma State team that's struggling defensively, as a 14-point favorite. Alabama's win would be more impressive. However, Texas did beat Alabama by 10 points on the road back in week 2. And if you're the committee, you can't say, well, that's great and all, but we still think Alabama should get in. In theory, Texas should get in over Alabama, and this is where I think you could spark a lot of controversy here. I think because Georgia still would obviously have a very good case to get in. Texas, as a conference champion, owns the head-to-head over Alabama. To me, that's the projected order. It should be Texas 4, Alabama 5, Georgia 6. That's how it should be. But would the committee really consider putting Alabama in over Texas because the Crimson Tide, from start to finish, have better victories on the year? They would have a win over Ole Miss, who's hovering around the top 10. They would have a win over LSU and a potential Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels. They would have the win over Georgia in the SEC Championship. Would that be enough to jump Texas, even though Texas owns the head-to-head? I wouldn't think so. I think it would be ridiculous if that were the case, but that would definitely have these 3 teams sweating it out a little bit come Selection Sunday. But in this scenario, Michigan plays Texas, Pac-12 champ against Florida State. Over here, that's where things get really interesting. If you're an Ohio State fan, this is the chaotic scenario that you want to happen, right? Georgia takes down Alabama. We'll go with that. First one I have here. Michigan beats Iowa. I don't see a world where Iowa beats Michigan. Oregon, let's say, beats Washington. And obviously the Ducks are expected to. They're nearly 10-point favorites despite losing to the Huskies back in October. And then let's say Florida State does lose to Louisville, which is a possibility. If that happens, you have Georgia in, no doubt about it. They're the 1 seed. You have Michigan in, no doubt about it. They're the 2 seed. Oregon absolutely would jump to number 3. They basically would swap spots with Washington. But then the committee has to decide between an 11-1 Ohio State, who has an amazing loss, like a good quality loss by 6 points to Michigan, has been so good all year long, and a 12-1 Washington team that really beat Oregon. They beat Oregon State. They beat USC. They did their job, but lost to Oregon in the rematch. And let's say they lose by 1 possession. Let's say they lose by anywhere from 1 to 7 points. Let's go with that. At this point, Alabama's out. They have 2 losses. If Texas were to lose to Oklahoma State, that's included in this scenario. Texas loses to Oklahoma State. Texas has 2 losses. They are out. Florida State is out. So, again, in this scenario, you would need Alabama to lose. You would need Washington to lose. You would need Florida State to lose. And you would need Texas to lose. A lot of chaos there, but it's not impossible. If that happens, Ohio State has a chance, and the committee has to decide, do we put in the Buckeyes or do we put in Washington, who just lost their conference championship? And to me, we could see this being a bit of a TCU scenario. If you remember last year, TCU was undefeated, got their rematch against Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game, lost to the Wildcats, lost to them in overtime, so a narrow, close loss, and didn't even move. They lost that game, and they stayed put at the number 3 seed. Could the committee consider doing that to Washington and saying, hey, we'll just drop them from 3 to 4, an Ohio State who didn't even play for their conference championship, who didn't have to have the burden of playing an extra game, we're going to leave them out? Or does the committee say, hey, you know what? We're going to put Ohio State in. We're going to get the Buckeyes in there. We think they're better than Washington, who, yes, despite going undefeated in the regular season, had a lot of narrow losses, 6 of their 12 games decided by 1 possession. We put Ohio State in. I think the committee would do that. I think the committee puts Ohio State in over Washington if the Huskies lose the Pac-12 championship game. And then obviously we have all the other chaotic scenarios happening. Texas loses, Alabama loses, Florida State loses, Washington loses. All that happens. that's what happens there. So, again, if you're an Ohio State fan, you need a lot of help. You need Georgia to win. You need Michigan to win. You need, Michigan could lose and would help you out as well, but you need Georgia to win. You need Oregon to win. You need Louisville to win. You need Oklahoma State to win. The odds of that happening very slim, but it's possible, and it would leave this committee to decide between these two teams. And I think they give the edge to the Buckeyes. Obviously, a decision that would spark a lot of controversy across the country. So there you go, guys. I hope that made sense. I hope that makes sense. Again, we kind of tried to break it down. We're going to have another scenario early Sunday morning, kind of sharing our predictions on what's going to happen on Selection Sunday. So we're not done yet. It's time to go out there and play the games. Obviously, this is the year that we wish we had a 12-team playoff that would make everything so much better, would cause less controversy. And there's so many good teams that it's a shame that we're going to see a handful of them miss out on this college football playoff. It's a shame that's going to come down to such a tight race. It's exciting. It's stressful. But a 12-team playoff, I think, would be more beneficial this year. But so it goes. Last year of the 14 playoff, and it's shaping up to be a chaotic one. Leave your predictions down in the comments below, and let's get ready for a massive college football weekend. One that, again, I am sure is going to be insanely chaotic. So, guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and, of course, check out everything down in the description below, including those expert picks, that holiday special there for you to give you every conference championship spread pick, every bowl game spread pick, every NFL playoff game spread pick. We want you to take advantage of those. Go sign up for those today. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.